In 1746, a schoolmaster in Edinburgh electrified 2 potted myrtle trees throughout the month of October. They bloomed out of season. That growth should not have occurred until spring. He documented it in a newspaper. Over the next 280 years, physicists replicated the effect. Government ministries investigated. A committee of Nobel laureates confirmed it worked. And then the reports were filed away, marked not for publication. And an industry that needed you to buy something new every year erased it from the textbooks. The archive opens in Edinburgh, October 1746, in a schoolroom run by the son of French Huguenot refugees. Stephen Charles Triboutet de Membray is not a farmer. He is an educator, the kind of curious mind who reads everything and tinkers constantly. His father runs a school here. Stephen helps teach, but in the evenings he builds. The apparatus looks strange even for its time. A glass globe mounted on a wooden frame, a crank that spins it against a leather pad. Metal collectors that gather what the spinning produces, an invisible force that makes hair stand on end and causes sparks to jump between fingertips. They call it the electrical fluid. De Membray has a question. What happens if you give this fluid to a plant? He runs wires from his collector to 2 potted myrtle trees. For the entire month of October, he keeps them charged. The glass spins, the electricity flows, and the trees begin to change. In October, in Scotland, when myrtle trees are supposed to be dormant, the shrubs put out new branches. They blossom. Growth that should not occur until spring is happening in autumn, under the influence of nothing but invisible electrical charge. On February 20th, 1747, de Membray published his findings in the Caledonian Mercury. It was not a scientific journal, it was a newspaper, but it was documentation, the first recorded experiment in what would come to be called electroculture. This is not about a plant. This is about what happens to all plants when you add one invisible ingredient, electricity. De Membray did not know what he had started. He could not have imagined that his simple experiment would attract Fellows of the Royal Society, Nobel Prize winners, and entire government ministries over the next 280 years. He certainly could not have predicted that the science he founded would one day be buried, not because it failed, but because it worked too well to fit into an economic system that required you to buy something new every season. The myrtle trees bloomed out of season. The questions they raised would take centuries to answer. The electrical experiments did not end in Edinburgh. They migrated south to a country that would develop the most systematic electroculture research of the 18th and 19th centuries. In 1783, Abbé Pierre Bertholon de Saint-Lazare built a device he called the electro-vegetatometer. Picture it. Miniature lightning conductors rising from a garden in provincial France, wires running between them like the web of some mechanical spider. Bertholon had observed that storms seemed to invigorate plant growth. His question was simple. Could he capture atmospheric electricity and feed it directly to the roots? His treatise De l'électricité des végétaux documented the results. The book still exists. You can read it today through Gallica, the French National Library's digital archive. This was not amateur speculation. This was systematic agricultural science, preserved in government records for 240 years. Bertholon's methods were inventive. He watered his plants with electrified liquid using an insulated barrel mounted on a trolley, charged by his apparatus. The water itself carried invisible energy to the soil. His contemporaries thought him eccentric. His vegetables grew larger than theirs. A century later, the tradition continued. Father Paulin, director of the Agricultural Institute at Beauvais, refined the approach in the 1890s. He called his device the geomagnetifère, an atmospheric antenna designed to harvest electricity from the air itself. The technical journal Le Génie Civil published illustrations of his apparatus in 1892. His potatoes grew greener, healthier, and produced more. His vineyards yielded sweeter, larger grapes that made better wine. This was not mysticism. This was documented agricultural improvement, published in engineering journals for other practitioners to replicate. What the French understood, what we have largely forgotten, is that electricity is not separate from nature. The atmosphere crackles with it before every thunderstorm. Plants evolved in this electrical environment for hundreds of millions of years. Berthelon and Pauline were not adding something foreign to their gardens. They were amplifying something already present. But the most rigorous documentation would come not from France, but from the far north, from a physicist who noticed something strange about trees growing beneath the aurora borealis. Carl Selim Lemstrom was a geophysicist at Helsinki University, and his obsession was the northern lights. In the 1880s, studying auroral phenomena in the Arctic, Lemstrom noticed something that had nothing to do with atmospheric physics. The trees near areas of intense auroral activity grew unusually fast. Vegetation in far northern latitudes, places where growing seasons were brutally short, seemed to thrive beneath the dancing lights. His question was audacious. Could the electrical activity of the aurora be stimulating plant growth? Lemstrom built an apparatus to test it. Wimshurst generators, Leyden jars to store the charge. A network of overhead wires stretched about 7 feet above his experimental plots, discharging electricity at 40,000 to 80,000 volts. The air beneath them carried the faint smell of ozone, the hum you hear before a storm. What he measured should not have been possible. His carrot yields increased by 125%, not a modest improvement, more than double the harvest of his control plots. The same soil, the same seeds, the same water, but beneath the wires, the carrots grew to twice the size. Raspberries showed a 95% increase. Peas increased 75%. Greenhouse strawberries, the finding that fascinated his contemporaries most, ripened in half the normal time. But Lemstrom was not a zealot. He documented his failures with the same precision as his successes. Cabbage grew better without electrification. So did turnips. So did flax. The effect was real, but it was not universal. Some crops responded dramatically. Others did not respond at all. This was science, not miracle, and that made it all the more threatening to explain. Under the agronomic understanding of his time, plants needed 3 things: water, sunlight, and soil nutrients. That was the model. Add those inputs in the right proportions, and you maximize growth. But here was a Finnish physicist documenting that invisible electrical fields, the same fields that painted the northern lights across Arctic skies, could more than double the yield of certain crops. How? Why? Through what mechanism? Lemstrom published his findings in 1904, Electricity in Agriculture and Horticulture, printed in London by the Electrician Printing and Publishing Company. The book is still available. You can read it for free at the Internet Archive. The British Ministry of Agriculture read it too. In 1918, they established a committee to test Lemstrom's claims. What they discovered would be stamped not for publication. The British Electroculture Committee was not a fringe operation. Established in 1918 under the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, it comprised 11 members. 6 of them were Fellows of the Royal Society, the most prestigious scientific body in Britain. One was Charles Wilson, who would later win the Nobel Prize in Physics. This was serious institutional investment in a serious scientific question. By 1920, the committee had conducted 12 experiments. 11 showed positive results. 8 demonstrated yield increases between 30 and 50%. 125% increases in carrots were not an anomaly. Lemstrom's findings were being replicated. And then something changed. From 1922 onward, the committee's reports were stamped not for publication. Only 2 copies of each report were printed, one for the minister and one for the archives. The public would not see them. Other scientists could not build on them. The committee continued its work in silence for another 14 years. In 1936, it was quietly disbanded. The official conclusion stated there was little advantage to continue the work either on economic or on scientific grounds. Little advantage. After 18 years of documented positive results, after 8 experiments showing 30 to 50% yield increases. Little advantage. Research by David Kinahan at University College London later uncovered a complicating detail. The committee's chairman, Sir John Snell, held a second position. He was simultaneously chairman of the Electricity Commission, overseeing the construction of Britain's national grid. A man with deep interest in how the public understood electromagnetic effects was deciding the fate of research on those effects. But here is where we must be careful. The full picture is more nuanced than conspiracy. Electroculture produced inconsistent results, dramatic successes alongside inexplicable failures. The equipment was expensive. Weather affected outcomes unpredictably. Chemical fertilizers, meanwhile, were becoming cheaper and more reliable every year. In 1909, Fritz Haber had synthesized ammonia at the University of Karlsruhe. By 1913, BASF's Opal plant was producing it at industrial scale. The Haber-Bosch process would transform agriculture more thoroughly than any technology since the plow. Today, according to Nature Geoscience, half of the world's food production depends on Haber-Bosch-derived fertilizers. The global fertilizer market exceeds $200 billion annually. That is not a market. That is an infrastructure. Consider what electroculture offered instead: overhead wires, atmospheric electricity, equipment you install once and use for decades. You cannot patent the electrical field of a thunderstorm. You cannot sell atmospheric charge in a bag. You cannot create annual dependency on something that never runs out. They marked the positive results as not for publication, starting in 1922. They appointed a chairman with a conflict of interest. The man overseeing the national grid decided the fate of research on electromagnetic effects. They concluded there was little advantage, while their own experiments showed yield increases that fertilizer companies would kill to achieve. They did not disprove electroculture, they defunded it. There is a difference. The British committee did confirm in their unpublished reports that the electroculture effect is a real one. The science did not fail. It was simply outcompeted by something easier to industrialize, easier to monetize, and easier to make you buy again next year. While the West was busy forgetting, one government kept researching. Professor Liu Binjiang leads an electroculture program at the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences that most Western scientists have never heard of. It has been running continuously since 1990, 35 years of systematic research on a technique dismissed elsewhere as Victorian pseudoscience. The methodology uses bare copper wires suspended 3 meters above greenhouse crops. The system delivers high-voltage pulses up to 50,000 volts, but only microamperes of current, less electrical load than a smartphone charging cable. Power consumption runs approximately 15 kilowatt-hours per hectare per day. The scale is not modest. Liu Binjiang's program has tested these systems across 3,600 hectares of greenhouse agriculture, from the Gobi Desert in Xinjiang to coastal Pacific growing regions. The program expands by 1,000 to 1,300 hectares every year. This is not a laboratory curiosity. This is deployed agricultural technology. In August 2018, journalist Stephen Chen reported on the program in the South China Morning Post. For most Western readers, it was the first they had heard of it. A technique abandoned by the British Ministry of Agriculture in 1936 had been running continuously in Chinese government greenhouses for nearly 30 years. The documented results, while from government program releases rather than peer-reviewed papers, are striking. Vegetable yields increased 20 to 30%. Pesticide use dropped 70 to 100%. The electrical fields appeared to suppress certain pests and pathogens. Fertilizer consumption decreased by approximately 20%. Then came the peer review. In 2022, researchers including Zhonglin Wang, affiliated with both the Beijing Institute of Nanoenergy and Nanosystems and Georgia Institute of Technology, published a study in Nature Food. They used a triboelectric nanogenerator, a device that harvests electricity from wind and rainfall. The device cost approximately $40. The results showed pea germination speed increasing by roughly 26%. Pea yields increased approximately 18%. This is not a forgotten Victorian fantasy. This is a study published in one of the world's leading scientific journals in 2022, using equipment that costs less than a dinner for two, while Western textbooks classified electroculture as debunked fringe science. One government invested 35 years in understanding it. One research team built a $40 device that boosts crop yields and published their findings in Nature Food. The question is no longer whether electricity affects plant growth. The peer-reviewed science confirms it does. The question is why this was never in your biology textbook. But here we must draw a clear line. The electroculture trending on social media, copper wire spirals stuck in garden beds, and antennas supposedly capturing atmospheric energy has no scientific support. A January 2025 study in PLOS-1 specifically tested passive copper dowels for home gardens and found no consistent evidence of benefit. The energy levels involved are infinitesimally small compared to what works in laboratory studies. What Lemstrom used was 40,000 to 80,000 volts. What Liu Binjiang uses is 50,000 volts. What the Nature Food study used was an active triboelectric generator, converting mechanical energy into electrical stimulation. What TikTok shows you is a spiral of copper wire producing effectively nothing. This distinction matters. Real electroculture, active electrical stimulation of plants, has documented, peer-reviewed support spanning more than a century. The version you have probably seen online is a simplified fantasy that shares only the name. If you are genuinely curious, the real research is accessible. Lemstrom's 1904 book, Electricity in Agriculture and Horticulture, is freely available at the Internet Archive. The 2022 Nature Food study can be accessed via its DOI. Zhonglin Wang's triboelectric nanogenerator designs are published for anyone with the technical skill to replicate them. A caution: the systems that actually work involve voltages that can kill you. Do not attempt to build Lemstrom-style apparatus without proper electrical training and safety protocols. The safe entry point requires engineering knowledge, not a spiral of copper wire. 280 years ago, a schoolmaster in Edinburgh watched 2 myrtle trees bloom out of season. He documented it in a newspaper. Physicists replicated it. Government committees confirmed it. And then the reports were marked not for publication. The committee was disbanded, and an industry that needed you to buy something new every season sold you something easier to bag. The science did not disappear because it failed. It disappeared because it could not be monetized. And it did not stay disappeared everywhere. The archive is open now. The experiments are documented. The peer-reviewed papers exist for anyone willing to read them. The question is not whether you believe in electroculture. The question is whether you are willing to investigate what the actual science says, rather than what was convenient for you to be taught. Now you know.